Can you imagine growing up in a mega-sized starship made of bricks and concrete? Well, that's how I used to see the huge housing blocks of the council estate that I grew up on. I was so obsessed with space when I was young. Any TV show or movie that had spaceships and robots and some form of futuristic thing, I was so locked in. Whether it was Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, of course, Star Wars, especially when my mum bought me the Millennium Falcon for my 8th birthday. That shit became my everything. But my number one toy as a kid was my assorted collection of 1980s Lego space sets. Back then, I absolutely loved spending hours building all sorts of spaceships and futuristic moon bases. So when I was allowed to go out and play in this concrete environment, these huge structures and hard edges and repeating patterns, to me, it was like I was stepping out into my own moon bases and spaceships. I grew up in Peckham, South London, on the Gloucester Grove estate. A set of concrete bridges connected it to the neighbouring North Peckham and Camden estates, which meant you could enter the estates and through a network of internal corridors and elevated walkways, you could walk for half a mile through all 3 estates without needing to touch the ground before you come out at the other end. Each estate had its own distinct design and personality. The layout of the Gloucester Grove was like a long wall that spanned half the length of Burgess Park. It featured a series of multi-level blocks with long internal corridors that were all linked together by tall cylinder lift shafts and circular stairwells. The North Peckham was totally different in design. It was vast in size, a dense labyrinth of housing blocks, all connected by walkways, all on the same elevated level. At the far end of the North Peckham estate, a concrete bridge crossed over the road into the Camden estate, which was also very different in its design of multi-level blocks and elevated walkways. I was one of those 80s latchkey kids who just loved to be outside all the time. I was very curious and adventurous as a child, and I liked to discover new parts of the estates that I'd never been before. While others saw something harsh and intimidating in these imposing structures, to me, I saw a huge concrete adventure playground. On foot, my imagination was exploring a futuristic space base. On bikes, whizzing around and racing through the corridors. It felt like I was one of those X-Wing fighters flying through the gully of the Death Star. As I got older, I obviously became more aware of the social ills of deprivation and crime and the sheer weight of living in such a concrete environment. But even then, I never lost my interest and fascination with these structures. To me, they kind of felt protective, like a featured character of my childhood, a protective fortress of my imagination. And when there were times when it became too much and I needed time out, I would often find myself taking solo trips to the top floor of the highest block on the estate, just to look out the window and stare at the distant city skyline and wonder what lay beyond the tower blocks, imagining how far I might travel one day. Looking back now, I can see that that concrete environment was my first teacher of form. It taught me that every structure carries meaning, and that form doesn't just shape space, it shapes feeling.